Today we're going to make a vintage cocktail, the Clover Club. For this drink, you're going to need a coupe glass, a jigger, a cocktail shaker, a citrus juicer, a fine mesh strainer, a cutting board and a small knife, and optionally, a vegetable peeler. This drink uses gin, freshly squeezed lemon juice, homemade raspberry syrup, and an egg white. The Clover Club is a fairly simple cocktail, but one with a big, unique flavor profile. It's on the sour side, and the botanicals of the gin shine through, but the sting is taken out of it by the sweet yet tart raspberry syrup, and the whole thing is rounded off with the creamy texture of the egg white. It reminds me of a white lady, where the orange liqueur is swapped out for raspberry syrup. However, the Clover Club actually predates the white lady by at least a couple decades. In the 1870s, the U.S. entered an era that became known as the Gilded Age. The term came from a Mark Twain book that explored the greed, corruption, and decadence of the post-Civil War American landscape. These excesses came to represent the times that gave rise to Rockefeller, Carnegie, Vanderbilt, Gould, Morgan, Hearst, and others. A new class of ultra-wealthy plunderers and swindlers known as the robber barons. Through graft, monopoly, and social Darwinism during the Second Industrial Revolution, these tycoons amassed fortunes only previously rivaled by monarchs. During this era of gilded gold and painted lilies, a small social club formed in Philadelphia. An informal dinner was held in January 1880 for 15 people, mostly newspaper men. They called themselves the Thursday Club because they met once a month on Thursdays. Almost 2 years later, the club dissolved, but a splinter cell broke off and formed another club. They started meeting in the Girard House on the third Thursday of every month, and after a couple meetings, renamed themselves the Clover Club. They chose the clover to represent themselves because it was a symbol of good fortune. The expression "to live in clover" meant to have a carefree existence, prosperity, comfort, and the pursuit of happiness. So it's fitting that their motto was, "While we live in clover." The club relocated their meetings to the Hotel Bellevue, where it remained for 20 years before moving again to the much grander Bellvue-Stratford. Both Bellevues were owned and operated by George C. Bolt. Bolt's particular brand of hospitality catered to the tycoon class. The Bellevue was exorbitantly luxurious, which was perfect for its gilded clientele. Bolt was enlisted to run the Waldorf-Astoria and act as a mediator between the two feuding Astor cousins, who each owned one of the hotels that shared opposing sides of a square block. These are the original 19th century hotels that were later demolished to make way for the Empire State Building, not the one that was built in the 1930s that still stands today. Bolt loved the Clover Club. Its members were not exactly in the league of extraordinary robber barons that Bolt usually bantered to, but they weren't exactly living paycheck to paycheck either. The Cloverites were newspapermen, lawyers, judges, senators, presidents, cartoonists, and satirists. They only had about 50 full-fledged members, but they had several prominent guests and honorary members, such as then-President Grover Cleveland, Thomas Nast, Elbert Hubbard, and even the man who named the era, Mark Twain. Nast was a political cartoonist who, among other things, created our modern idea of Santa Claus, helped bring down Boss Tweed, and is credited with helping to get Grover Cleveland elected president. Hubbard was a Christian anarchist socialist writer who coined the idiom, "When life gives you lemons, make lemonade." He and his wife were also passengers on the Lusitania when it was torpedoed by the Germans, which became part of the justification for the U.S. to enter World War I. It was around this point that the Clover Club came to an end. Its existence paralleled the Gilded Age, give or take a decade, and was dissolved by the time of the war to end all wars, World War I. However, the cocktail bearing its name was carried on. Exactly when the drink was invented and by whom is not really known, but it showed up in print as early as 1901. Michael J. Kalacki, the head bartender of the Waldorf-Astoria, shared the recipe with the New York Press. The recipe was undoubtedly given to Kalacki by George C. Bolt. The drink was originally composed of gin, lemon juice, granulated sugar, raspberry syrup, and an egg white. This is the recipe that caught on 9 years later in 1910. It gained prestige in New York on the Waldorf-Astoria menu. The Waldorf-Astoria was a tastemaker. The Bloody Mary, Thousand Island dressing, the Waldorf salad, Eggs Benedict, and others were either created or popularized on their menus. The Clover Club remained popular through Prohibition and appeared on menus at Harry's New York Bar in Paris and at the Savoy in London. And like a lot of classic drinks, it had a resurgence from being explored in David Wondrich's seminal cocktail book, Imbibe. In 2008, Julie Reiner, the co-founder of Manhattan's Bellvue Club, opened a bar in Brooklyn called the Clover Club. Her second bar to take its name from a cocktail that was named after a 19th century club. And if you order a Clover Club while you're there, you can rest assured they'll do it justice. The recipe I like the best comes from the 12-bottle bar from Leslie and David Salmonson. It's slightly simplified from the original. It does away with the sugar, but makes up for the sweetness by increasing the raspberry syrup. Raspberry syrup is really easy to make, and if you haven't tried it, now's your chance. If you don't have raspberries on hand and eat a Clover Club, you can try subbing in homemade grenadine. According to Ted Haig, it was fairly common for bartenders to swap grenadine for raspberry syrup and vice versa, depending on what they had on hand. As for the garnish, you'll see some people plop a raspberry on top, and that's fine, but what I like to do is hit it with a lemon twist. The lemon oils will help eliminate any of that wet dog smell that some egg whites give off. But unlike most drinks, I don't like to garnish it with a lemon peel, because I love the foamy head of this drink just the way it is. Before I get started, I like to cut, squeeze, strain, and bottle my lemon juice. That way it's easier to pour when it comes time to measure. Then chill the glass, fill it with ice and water, and set it aside. Next, we're going to measure 1.5 ounces of gin, add that to the shaker. Measure 3/4 ounce of lemon juice, add that to the shaker. Measure 1/4 ounce of raspberry syrup, add that to the shaker. Crack your egg, open it, and roll it back and forth to separate the white from the yolk. I like to do this over a bowl just in case I screw it up. Then add that to the shaker. We're going to give this one a dry shake, which means without ice. This will help emulsify the egg white. Then we'll add the ice and shake it again to chill it down and give it some dilution. Dump the ice and water from your coupe glass. Then double strain the contents of your shaker into your chilled cocktail glass. Optionally, cut a wide swath of lemon peel. This one can be with or without pith. Express the oils of your lemon twist over the drink. Then toss out the peel. We're only in it for the oils. And there you have it. While we live in Clover. The Clover Club. Enjoy. You can support this channel by clicking on the Patreon link here. Check out some more videos and be sure to subscribe. For links, more info, and the printed recipe, check out the description below.